in cost and reduction in waste. Initial results demonstrate that the screening area has resulted in the reduction of 45 to 59% waste reduction per testing. In the next slide, can we go over this slide? Okay, as we said earlier, as frontliners, uh, the issue of safety is covered when PPE is assured. However, too much use of PPE would mean too much volume of waste. This includes gowns, gloves, face shields, and masks. And this has been shown across the globe. It's not only a Taiwanese, but much more a global problem, and much more now a Philippine problem, as we are not able to resolve the increasing cases of COVID-19 day to day in our own country. Now, as we move forward in the next slide, I just want to show to you how it was done. So at the setup phase, they use acrylic glasses to build a window with two PICS gloves to collect throat swabs, or what we call as the COVID swabbing test. And this is less than $350, which included a walkie-talkie and acrylic window and gloves. This may be too familiar now with all of us, as more countries and more hospitals adopt the same kind of system. But in March, at that early point of the COVID pandemic, this was a very innovative approach to testing. Note that a negative pressure room is not required, but it is vital to keep this as a secluded, isolated space. In the actual case study, you would see the step-by-step procedure, but I would not go through that through those details any further. In the next slide, tracking now the progress of this initiative. On the ways, reducing the use of PPE for clinicians who collect throat swab for each medical procedure includes water-resistant gown, gloves. So when we say PPE, it's not only the gown. It includes the gown itself, gloves, disposable face shield, N95 face mask, hair cap, and shoe covers. But these are all lessened. And there is also less chemical use in disinfectant. And the reduction of frequent putting on and removing PPE reduces the risk of self-contamination to the healthcare workers or even to patients. The hospital is still continuing to explore tracking PPE inventory for a specific department going forward. So that is one case tried early in a hospital in Taiwan, and many already copied that approach on swab testing. The next case study is in Cahaya Kalbu Clinic. This is in West Java in Indonesia. And as we all know, there are only 2 ASEAN countries that have not resolved even the first wave of COVID transmission, Philippines and Indonesia. We have member hospitals in Indonesia, and this is how these particular hospitals are able to reduce dependence on single-use PPE. When they first recorded their COVID case in March, since then, the amount of outpatient and inpatient cases in the Cahaya Kalbu Clinic has also increased, because people tend to avoid big hospitals and they go to smaller clinics. Now, due to the COVID-19 situation, the clinic encountered issues on the use of PPE. PPE, particularly then, as we all know how it happens here in the Philippines, the availability of PPE is very scarce. Prices are getting higher every day, and disposing it becomes a problem. It adds to the amount of their medical waste. Right away, the leadership, and this is where leadership is important, of the hospital made changes to the standard operating procedures in their clinic by using by replacing disposable PPE with washable PPE to reduce waste. So, and these are the two types of PPE. You see there on the first screen, this is for the triage in the emergency department, a third level of PPE. In the next picture, this is the second type of PPE. This is for the outpatient and admission care, which is a second level of PPE. They begin using washable surgical gowns covered with apron from natural skin. So what is the progress in the next slide? This is immediate. There is an outright reduction in medical waste of disposable PPE by 90%. And an equivalent amount of savings on the clinic budget for PPE by 90% as well. So procurement of washable overall suit instead of disposable PPE made them progress, lessening their waste and saving money. Now, in the next slide, just to close the presentation of the case studies, the clinic, as they presented to us and submitted to us this case study, and this was about more than a month ago, the Kahaya Talbo Clinic will continue to look for safer alternatives to disposable PPE that can protect its healthcare workers as well as the environment. And you would see there the information about the clinic, and this is again in West Java in Indonesia. So I cited there two cases. Let us go now to the next slide. How do we bring this whole lesson at the macro level? So definitely those two small hospitals have shown that it can be addressed at their level. But how much more at the societal or systemic level? Now let us look at the pandemic as it also drives the waste prices up. The volume of waste in healthcare facilities has increased at least by 10%. This is by our interview with our member hospitals. Again, mainly due to pervasive use of single-use plastic. But this can go up to 80%. For example, when we have a meeting with the Lung Center of the Philippines, they admit that the COVID referral facilities, which is their own hospitals, have experienced 80% increase in infectious waste. Since all types of waste are considered, once it comes from the COVID ward, it is considered as hazardous waste. No more segregation. It just dump them all together as infectious waste. Now, but the healthcare sector is also part of the booming e-commerce and food delivery in the times of pandemic, which also drives up our plastic waste. Therefore, in communities, markets, and offices, there is an observable increase in municipal waste made up of masks, visors, gloves, and face masks. Now, how do we address this as healthcare without harm? As an institution committed to promoting public health, but also lessening its harm to the environment. The model as shown in this screen would show that first, we go for less harm in the operations of hospitals and healthcare facilities. Second, we move to healing. And then hopefully healthcare facilities contributing no harm at all to the environment. How do we do this? Through three strategies. And how do we now apply waste management in the context of this theory of change, governing our work on sustainability in our member healthcare systems and hospitals? On the first strategy, mitigate healthcare impact. Can we move to the next slide? healthcare sector is responsible to clean up its own house. We cannot just throw away our waste and let it be picked up by private haulers as if we are no and hospitals are no longer responsible for its waste. It should be able to mitigate its direct environmental and public health footprint. It must deliver health services that create no negative environmental health impact on people or on the planet. And this is why we need to build them as a network and showcase each other's best practices. And hospitals cannot be segregated or separated from the community. It must stimulate cross-sector collaboration to build networks for community health environment. Now, at least we are doing this in 3 or even more hospitals. Sorry, in 3 or even more countries in ASEAN. One is in the Philippines, in Indonesia, and now we also have agreed that we will work with Vietnam, with the Ministry of Health, the Environmental Health Unit of the Ministry of Health in Vietnam. So in these countries, there is a deliberate effort in effectively addressing the burden of disease while minimizing plastic waste. Plastic waste because right away it constitutes up to 70% of hospital waste. And this has been proven in several waste audits that we have conducted over the past 2, 3 years. Whether it's pandemic or no pandemic setting, we must be able to address plastic in healthcare. But it has worsened now because of the single-use PPE. And these hospitals can be both public, private, small and big facilities located in urban and semi-urban settings. So this is lessening the harm to environment. Now, the second strategy as we move along is to anchor health and resilience. Meaning now that the healthcare and the public health system systems, they partner with communities through social, economic, and ecological strategies. Now, resilience is carried thoroughly, not only on waste management, but purchasing, supply utilization, and waste disposal. Single-use plastic is reduced by 90%, such that surrounding communities, including food businesses, the private sector, the private offices, the schools, the residential neighborhoods, government offices are positively influenced towards zero plastic waste system and lifestyle started in the hospital. Now, as for the third strategy, this should lead to broader societal transformation, meaning health leaders advocate for policies that are more protective of both the human health and the ecosystem that sustains all life, capitalizing broader market and societal transformation. So you would see here that we are not only talking about policy changes and policy reforms, but we want this to lead to market transformation in the way the supply chain runs itself, in the way procurement behavior of hospitals and even the suppliers are running. And people gain equal access to healthy living conditions and health services. So in terms of how do we do this in addressing PPE waste, apart from the case studies that you have seen a while ago, healthcare professionals and institutions will be mobilized as leading advocates for change in the broader society and at the policy level. This will include the network of hospitals, that is the Global Green and Healthy Hospital Network, and other hospital associations, groups, medical and professional associations as well, as the lead policy group in this broader societal transformative strategy. And this is being done globally. This is not as if it's all theorizing, but we are pushing this on, even in the light party, or even because particularly now of the need to address the pandemic and to transition us to a better, more sustainable normal. Now, in the Philippines and in Southeast Asia, where do we do this and how do we do it? And this is now the last slide. We've been doing waste audits even prior to the pandemic. And we will do it again because of the pandemic, because COVID-19 brought so much waste volume into our environment that we need to analyze and see how we can work effectively, not only at the hospital level, but at the policy, LGU level, for example, DOH, or even the national government. And we already have agreed with DOH to and agreed to help out 5 of their national hospitals under the management of the Department of Health. And then we are working on a project that will quantify and analyze the surge of waste in Metro Manila. And this is working with some community-based network within our Break Free from Plastic coalition. And we will do this within the year as well. Now, the third is at the ASEAN level. As mentioned, we are working with our hospital networks in Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam. We would want to make a comparative plastic in healthcare study. Vietnam has the lowest COVID transmission rate. It has 0 deaths up to now. For the past 100 days, Vietnam has not had any local transmission. You can imagine how much less waste are they generating. But Indonesia and Philippines are the 2 top ASEAN countries that have not even resolved, as I said, the first wave of transmission, and we're still suffering. But the suffering is not only on the health of the people, it's also the suffering that we are imposing upon our environment with so much waste. And this is where we would want to help and do a comparative study. And maybe in the 3rd or the 4th round of webinars like this, we can share results of the bigger waste management initiative in healthcare setting. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Sir Ramon, for that informative presentation. I believe our participants gathered so many key points on how we can sustainably manage the wastes produced by the current pandemic. I would also like to highlight the points made by Sir Ramon that leadership and innovation is an important aspect to fight the waste crisis in the middle of health crisis by applying or having a theory of change in managing our waste. Also, it is important to have a strategy and plan to handle this kind of situation, especially at this moment. And through this, it can lead us to broader societal transformation, especially or specifically on our healthcare system. Again, thank you, Sir Ramon San Pascual, the Executive Director of Healthcare Without Harm, Southeast Asia. Again, we would like to thank all of our participants who joined us today for this webinar. We are now 335 as of the moment. Now, before we move on to the next speaker, a young lady from Mindanao will give us an intermission number. Ayan is a singer, a writer, youth leader, and an environmental advocate. She is currently taking up BS Biology at UP Mindanao. She has been performing across the Philippines as Ayan is a member of UP Mindanao Coro Kantahanay, Gensan Youth Choir, and Pisay Sargen Region Campus Coral. She is currently the chairperson of the Confederation of Filipino Youth Leaders, a student by weekdays, a writer on weekends, and an eagle for a lifetime. To sing for us the song Heal the World, let's welcome Miss Marian Hazel Bullios.
Hello!
Ayan.
Magandang hapon. Hindi ko po ma-open yung video ko. Ayan. I cannot open po yung video. Hello po. Can you hear me po?
Yes, Ayan, you're audible.
Okay. I cannot open po yung video ko po.
All right.
Okay. Sige. Ayan. Kita niyo na ba? Hi!
Yes, hello.
Magandang hapon from General Santos City. So, I hope you'll be inspired of this song to make a difference. And if you know it, tara, jamming tayo. Yeah. Okay. I have my guitar with me. Okay. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, make a little space. Make a better place. There's a place in your heart, and to know that it is love. And this place could be much brighter than tomorrow. If you really try, but there's no need to cry. In this place, you feel there's no hurt or sorrow. There are ways to get there if you care enough with the living. Make a little space, make a better place. There comes a time when we hear the certain call, when the world must come together as one. There are people dying. Oh, it's time to let a hand to revive the greatest gift of all in the world. Make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, make a better place for you and for me. Oh, send up your heart so they know that someone cares, and their lives will be stronger and free. As God has shown us by turning stones to bread, so we all must lend a helping hand. We are the one, we are the children. Sing with me. We are the ones who make a better day, so let's start here. There's a choice we're making. We're saving our own lives. It's true, make a better day, just you and me. And the dreams were conceived and reveal a joyful face. And the world we once believed in will shine again in grace. Then why do we keep strength in life? With this earth is your finest soul. This earth to see like us love. Clap! Heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, make a better place for you and for me. Make a better place for you and for me. For you and for me. For you and for me. For you and the world we're living. Save it for our children. In the world we're living, take care of our environment. In the world we're living, save it for our children. In the world we're living, take care of our environment. Ayan, thank you. I think that's it.
Right. Thank you, Ayan, for that wonderful performance. I really enjoyed it. For our participants, what can you say about her performance? I hope every one of us feel alive and got inspired by her voice and the message of the song she sang a while ago. I'm very glad that we did it here in this webinar. It's actually my first time hearing and seeing a performer in a webinar. Again, thank you for sharing your talent, Ayan. And later, she will also give another performance before we end the program. Again, thank you, Miss Marian Hazel Bullios. Now, moving to our program, allow me to introduce our next speaker for for this afternoon session. She is the director of the Philippine Textile Research Institute of the Department of Science and Technology. She spearheads textile industry research, development, and collaboration, integrating supply and value chains through science, technology, and innovation, focusing on the campaign for Tela Filipinas. Tela Filipinas, which stands for Textile Empowering Lives Anew, has been the brand of DOST PTRI's initiatives, including stakeholder engagements under the banner of Tela Seria, Tela Nation, Tela ASEAN, and Tela Filipinas to boost the Philippine textile and allied industries towards global competitiveness. She is also the stalwart of Lab to Fab, or FAB, stands for Fabric Applications and Beyond, for applied research and closing the loop on fashion framework towards sustainable textile developments, able guides to the Institute's Research and Development Trust. In 2014, she was recognized by the University of the Philippines College of Home Economics as Distinguished Alumna. Everyone, let's welcome Director Celia Elumba.
Hi, magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. I wonder if I'm coming through loud and clear. I prepared a number of slides, and you will pardon me, I will breeze through a number of them so that we can observe our 15-minute rule. So if I may have the next slides, please. It's really an introduction to what I wanted to share with you. Context of these times of COVID-19, a quick response project that we are undertaking, and some other responses to sustainable medical textiles. So in effect, I'll be talking about the back end. It was wonderful that Mr. San Pascual spoke about what's happening and the going forward or the downstream. We'll be speaking to you about the upstream. So the next slide, please, will show you where we are at the DOSCPTRI. And the next slide will show you, breezing through, our mandate, which is threefold: R&D, technical services, and technology transfer of the developed technologies. Next slide, please. All of this you can find in our website, so I will not spend more time. I just wanted to give you images of what it is that we actually undertake. So this is our Innovation Center for Yarns and Textiles, where we do spun yarns of cotton blended with abaca, banana, and pineapple leaf. And the next slide will show you pictures of what this look like, which form part of what we call our Philippine tropical fabric materials. Next slide, please. But I wanted to show you really the closing the loop on fashion framework. This is what is our guide for our R&D thrusts. Essentially, the first layer talks to you about the supply and value chain transformation. And it just brings you to a product. We focus on rewear, where rewear really now is post-consumer and where you would like to be able to break this down into a new fiber, a new yarn, a new fabric to complete that loop of the cycle. And if you look at the next slide, you will find that a number of our R&D thrusts are already focused on achieving elements of this particular parts of the value or the supply chain even. So we will be focusing on a textile product development perspective, as well as the Tela Filipinas, which the next slide will show you is an approach towards inclusive innovation, inclusive strategy for the next slide. This is where you find that you have your components, your raw materials, your talent and skills of a community. And so the highest value transformation of whatever is available or grown in the location is then transformed in the very location where the raw material grows. And the next slide will show you part of that idea. Let's go to the next slide again, please. Where we have put together the maps of where we have our agricultural products and byproducts. And these are now tagged with the locations of our traditional textile manufacturers or handloom weavers, where you also have some natural dye sources. And so the next slide will show you the regional, we can move to the next one, the Regional Yarn Production and Innovation Center in Yangon in Iloilo that was established just in November of last year. Yes, please, the next slide. Where they now are able to produce abaca that's coming from Negros Oriental at this moment because the hinterlands are not very easy for the Iloilo guys to get to, but they are now using cotton produced in the very location of Iloilo itself. So the transformation of the material happens in their location to be used by the handloom weaving communities of Miagao and Iloilo in general and the Panay Island group. So the next slide. We'll go to the next. So this is another idea of the natural dyes. Our goal, therefore, is to look at a lot of what we have available already to us. So the next slide shows you a graphic images of what this Stella Pilipinas is all about. Everything you need to produce a product is available in that very location. The next slide, please. Well, this is another element to it. It's targeting precision in our Textile Product Development Center, where you are really now eliminating waste. You are now able to manipulate, and you can now do your prototyping visually or virtually, so that you don't have to keep on producing until you like the iteration. Next slide, please. So in these times of COVID-19, I just wanted to just walk through some ideas with you guys. And it's really, I will not go to the historical information, but let's move to the next slide. We know that the COVID-19 is not the virus, but the disease that the virus causes. This is just a historical information and how it has transformed, because seriously, context and history are very good points of references. And here you will see the 1918, for example, Spanish flu and how much it has cost in terms of deaths worldwide. But the point was, during the time of the Spanish flu, there was really no technical textile, no industrial textile, no synthetic materials, and they only used natural materials, which they used and reused in the process. So the next slide, please. This was information that was taken on April 29, and the next slide will show you how it has grown from 3.1 million to 14.9 million in incidents of confirmed cases worldwide of COVID-19. The next slide will show you a graph again from December to May on the left-hand side, and December to July. The trajectory has not changed. It's still the same. It just gives us the idea that seriously, this virus is not going to go away anytime soon. Not very quickly. It's going to be here for a while. So the next slide shows you countries or the ideas of countries winning, those who are nearly there and those who need action. And we are, of course, as has been already demonstrated by the earlier resource speaker, we are in the much needed action part of COVID-19 consideration. The next slide will show you, this is a screenshot from the COVID tracker of the DOH. While July 21 is now showing us very good information, this is from a week ago, we hope that it will stay there. That's not the news that you hear so far, but this is what is being shown in their website. So the next slide will then just give us basic information you already know. The mode of transmission, person to person, between persons in close contact, through respiratory droplets, also possible from people not showing symptoms or those who are asymptomatic or even presymptomatic. Next slide will tell us common measures how to flatten the curve. You know this already by heart, physical distancing. At least I hope you know this by heart. Practice of respiratory hygiene, frequent hand washing. And this is not just hand washing, but seriously, 20 seconds of soap. Soaping vigorously before you even apply water to it, and avoidance of face touching, and of course the use of face mask, ubiquitous these days. So this is now the 10-week PPE demand projection by the DOH using forecasting tools available at the WHO website. And it shows you for surgical masks, for example, they are needing 211 million for the 2.5-month period. That means 843 million face masks in 1 year alone. The next slide will show you worldwide, the demand is 129 billion face masks every month. What do you do with all of this if they are single-use disposable face masks? So the next slide will now tell us, as has already been mentioned earlier, this is now an added burden to the microplastics issue. And while it is debated in the Philippine front about the Philippines being the third largest contributor to ocean plastics, this has already been sort of declared that in this part of the world, we are the third largest contributor. The debate is because they're saying we don't really make that much, so how can we be putting out that much in the ocean system? But this has now been found in the water system, and we're not just talking oceans. When you're wearing, or if you're using, for example, synthetic materials on your person right now, when you wash this, whether it is hand washed or machine washed, you're expelling microfibers or creating microfibers in the millions and billions of microns in the water system. It has now been found in bottled water. A liter of bottled water now has about 7 to 8 pieces of 5 micron microfiber or plastic in it. You have it in the air, you have it in muscles, in bivalves, you have it in salt. So it's now a question of time when people determine what the effects on the human system is of microplastics in our environment and in our system itself. Next slide, please. So our present reality, therefore, the guys are fantastic with the Bayanihan spirit, right? When there's this huge demand and people were very fearful because we have family and friends in the industry who are getting affected, people jumped and said, we have to do something about this. And so we shifted from whatever was available or that you can buy. And factories who used to be producing fashion apparel now redirected and pivoted to make medical coveralls, if not face masks. And of course, what is the result? Well, you can tell on the right-hand picture that it's a hodgepodge, a mix that tells you it really is more fun in the Philippines, right? It's just really our way of responding. And it doesn't matter now the protective measure or issues that you have in these PPEs. It was a question of providing for us a sense of comfort or a sense of protection, whether that was real or not. It was really a measure of one's concern for all the others in that system. Next slide, please. So we're really looking out for circularity or an ode to the circular economy. This is a screenshot from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. They have a number of approaches to how we can arrive at circularity. And the key principles are to regenerate natural systems, keep products and materials in use for as long as possible, design out waste and pollution. So what are we looking at? We're putting in design as a context, as something that you will now consider. You do not have waste, but rather a byproduct is always precisely a product for the next process. And so that byproduct or that considered waste is really a resource for the other elements of your production process. So the next slide, please. So in our context, we developed a quick response called ReWear. And it is really what, in our words, a smart protective barrier to reduce the risk of respiratory infections while saving the environment in the process. Next slide, please. So how did the idea get started? It started with the volcanic eruption of Taal. We wanted to find a way on how people can be helped with ashfall protection that they needed without having to resort to the N95, which is very, very difficult to breathe through, but which gave the correct filtration for the ashfall, the size of the particle of the ashfall. So we started developing this then. And as we did that, it then found use for the COVID-19, except that cloth masks does not have the liquid repellency which you will need to repel a liquid-borne pathogen which comes with COVID-19 transmission. So we wanted to, of course, avoid the use of single-use disposable surgical masks. Next slide, please. So we then did a study looking at 4 parameters: intended use and purpose, the breathability, the fit, and the reusability. Breathability and fit become key because it has been found that if you are not comfortable with what you are using, the tendency is to remove it, and that defeats the whole purpose of a first line of defense in face masks. So what we developed was something that would have all of this or would address all of these factors. And the water repellency treatment that we apply does not provide a coating. In fact, it does not render a film on top of the surface. Instead, the breathability is not affected. Next slide, please. I will just allow you to read through the slides afterwards. So what is ReWear? It is reusable, washable, rewearable face masks technology and methodology. It is also a system of assuring a quality or safety seal in the process, in the system. So it is a face mask made smart because under our program, we have the Smart Textile Technology program that infuses these functions, a second function. The first function is you are protected from the environment with your clothing. The second function is it provides you with a water repellent, liquid repellent, quick dry, antimicrobial, UV blocking. You can develop other functionalities. So this is really face masks made smart to begin with the water repellency functionalization. Next slide, please. It is controlled by a quality system. Next slide. As well as a fabric and product property testing system, which is why we're saying it is more than just coming up with a ReWear mask. It is a seal or a safety assurance system. So while we are not positioning ReWear as a medical mask, it is really for non-medical purposes. We are also testing it against medical, on the right-hand side are your medical tests, international standards, so that we can determine at what level it can be really used for other future purposes. But at the moment we're iterating, we've found, and I will share this with you in other slides. Next slide, please. It is a cover against exposure to the elements with the liquid repellency as mentioned. This is your first functionality. Next slide. I'm sorry, it has formatting. Next slide, please. It is smart with the protection, the breathability, the fit, and the reusability. Next slide, please. It makes use of fabrics available in the country. If you know, the spun bond materials that is used for non-woven for the surgical mask are all imported. We have some people who are starting to produce in the country, but essentially the material itself is imported and then assembled here. In the case of freewear masks, we're using, in fact, we started with donations. We have a lot of knit fabric manufacturers in the Philippines. Yes, they import the yarns, but they process the yarn and make it into something else, a fabric, which then is infused with this finishing. And we use a design that uses two separate pieces so that you can wash the inner piece very hygienically with soap and water. And for the outside, all you need to do is rinse it in water because it is, after all, not going to be contaminated by liquid-borne pathogens. So then you can have more usefulness for this. The next slide, please. So the outer piece protects the wearer. The inner piece protects others from the wearer if the wearer happens to be asymptomatic or presymptomatic. Next slide, please. So rewear is smart because it is one mask that can be used 50 times. Next slide, please. You can find all of this information in, if you can go back, in the resource kit that we have put together. Sorry, so this is, okay, this is now the comparison. The WHO, as you know, has not really recommended the use of face masks for the longest time. They only adhered for this for medical practitioners, those in the front lines. But recently, I think this was about June 5 or so, they came up with recommendations given the severity of the issues with COVID-19. When we stacked up rewear against the recommendations of the WHO, rewear actually did pretty well. It is made of a knit material. The breathability is very good. If the recommendation was below 100 Pascal per cubic centimeter, ours was 27. It has a minimum of 4 layers. The innermost is hydrophilic, meaning it absorbs whatever you expel. The outermost is hydrophobic. It repels whatever is coming in as a liquid-borne pathogen. The middle is made of cotton blend, which of course is hydrophilic, or it absorbs. It is duckbill and curved, and it has a finishing technology which is covalently grafted, which means it does not coat the material, therefore the breathability is not impaired at all. The next slide will show you information that you can now access to our face mask resource kit. It has a lot of DIY videos, COVID-related resource links, research studies that will tell you, for example, why it is better to use any cloth mask. When they tell you it is better than nothing, it is true. It's backed up by studies. You actually filter 35 to 50% of particulates if you wear a face mask with or without any finishing on it, but obviously it will not provide you the protection you need for COVID-19. Next slide, please. So other responses include non-wovens that are making use of Philippine natural textile fibers of abaca, banana, pineapple leaf. Next slide. We have a project that we are proposing that will go into protective re-engineered occupational technical textiles apparels R&D program. The next slide will show you the conversion that we would like to undertake, making use of what it is that we already have. Next slide, please. From pineapple leaves, as well as silk cocoon that we have in our technology center in Misamis Oriental, and its various applications down the line, all the way for livelihood work that is given to garment manufacturers, protection for health workers, COVID centers, and office workers. Next slide, please. And so produce non-woven disinfecting mats, as well as filter technology. These are now your HEPA filters, making use of banana, pineapple, abaca, which are both product as well as byproduct. The banana and pineapple leaves are byproducts. They're agricultural waste already. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of information that you can find in our website, and I would appreciate if you could check it out, take a look at it. The resource kit also has a companion technology pack, tech pack, where you can find patterns for you to be able to make your own face masks or your own, just print it out and cut out your own and produce your own. So this is so that we can address this need that does not have to depend on commercial structures. So thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to your questions and you checking out what we have on our website. Thanks very much.
All right. Thank you, Ma'am Celia Elumba, the Director of Philippine Textile Research Institute, for that fruitful discussion. I believe our participants learned many points that we can actually achieve sustainability by incorporating strategy and innovation from our indigenous and raw materials are readily available in the country, and we can mix it up with the talents of our own Filipino people in the communities, and our incomparable creativity and skills. With that, we can have high quality products that can be used to protect our frontliners from the pandemic. I would also like to highlight the need for the shift to circular economy, as mentioned by Director Celia. As an environmental advocate, I really agree with that strategy. It could lead us to a sustainable future. And as Ma'am Celia mentioned earlier, we can see that there are a lot of ongoing innovation for masks and PPEs, like the rewear that she showed us, and so that we can lessen our wastes as we fight the health crisis. Again, thank you, Ma'am Celia. Once again, we would like to thank our speakers, Sir Ramon and Ma'am Celia, for their presentations. Now, at this moment, friends, we are now opening the floor for your questions. You can now ask your questions to our speakers by unmuting yourself or typing it in the chat panel. Please state your name, your organization, and to whom you are addressing your question. You can now ask our speakers. Anyone? Actually, I got our first question, and it is for Sir Ramon. So the question is about the infectious waste management in the country. Do we have an existing decision support system to assess and establish a quick response mechanism to address the impacts of infectious waste or healthcare wastes in the environment?
Thank you for the question. I hope you can hear me clearly. To the question, as far as we know in healthcare without harm, through feedbacking from our hospital network and green hospitals, as well as our participation in the activities of the Break Free from Plastic Coalition, there seems to be no one monitoring the rush or the upsurge of waste coming up from this pandemic. And this is exactly why we would want to initiate activities not only with hospitals, but as well as the local government units. Because as you may have seen in the case studies that I have shown at the beginning, early action contributes a lot in addressing the problem. But on the other hand, just looking at the crisis getting worse day by day and having it consider it as critical months later would already be too late. Manage it, if you see it as a problem, manage it at the onset. And that's how you saw even small hospitals be able to reduce their waste and be able to save on money. Same thing for the local government unit. Same thing for big healthcare facilities. But in this time and date, whether it's in the Philippines, in Indonesia, and other countries that where we operate in Southeast Asian region, we don't see decisive action by the government to begin managing in a sustainable manner the volume of waste generated by the pandemic. What we do see is panic. For example, in Congress, there is a policy proposal that to allow again the use of single-use kitchenware. The single-use and single-use packaging in stores, in shops, in restaurants, in food places, rather than be able to see what the problem is and resolve it fully. Because COVID, the virus, it sticks to plastic surfaces 3 to 5 days. So using plastic to package things that we consume and we eat will not mean minimizing the chances of you getting the virus. So rather than a panic response, I think we should be able to approach the problem in a sensible and still be able to provide solution that is sustainable. And hospitals are showing it, at least the green hospitals that we are working with.
All right. Thank you, Sir Ramon, for that insightful um, answer for that question. For our next question, it is for Ma'am Celia. Will commercially available technologies to address hazardous medical waste will be presented?
I apologize. I had indicated that we are not medical practitioners, nor are we in the waste management part. We wanted to share the approaches that we undertake. So it's we're not looking at that, but we are looking at a project right now that can look at the entire cycle. You know, there is a new idea. Circularity is part of this. It's called servicitization. Servicitization means that service is the product. As an example, the bedding, the linens that you have for hospitals, for example, those are all no longer owned by hospitals. They are owned by a company. In Bataan is the location. It's a Taiwanese company based in Bataan. They own the product. They lease this out to hospitals who buy the service of the product. They get it back. They rewash, relaunder it, send it back to the hospital. So this is now part of that whole idea of a different approach to to the way we do things, not straightforward. So uh, that would be the extent of what I can share with you because we're not in that in that sphere.
All right. Thank you, Ma'am Celia. Another question again for Ma'am Celia. Where to buy the masks and when it will be available? I think he or she referring to the masks that you presented earlier, ma'am.
Yes, the mask I had indicated the response as well. The rewear is, first of all, let me define that the Philippine Textile Research Institute is a R&D. We are a research and development institute. I was reminded that we are not a factory. We're not supposed to be making the product. We are making the technology. We generate the technology and we transfer the technology to somebody else who will then commercialize the production of the product. But in this instance, we took the bull by the horns because it was necessary. So we are orchestrating the production of 500,000 masks, which is equivalent to 25 million masks. And these are all going to be donated to the Office of Civil Defense for use of the national government agency frontliners, including DOH, including the PNP, the BJMP, the jail management people. So it is really meant for government use through the OCD. But we are speaking to adopters, people who will now commercialize this. And I had indicated that we will be putting out in our website and announcing where you can procure, secure, who you can go for a couple of things. You can either buy the fabric that is functionalized by them, so you can make your own master own clothing that is already infused with many more things, or you can buy the mask from them directly themselves. But this is a process. So I apologize that we don't really sell them. We are working with people who will. And as we speak, we are doing orientations on people who may be interested to adapt because it is a technology which uses a couple of things. You need equipment, the material, the technology. So you need those three things together. So if you're interested in the orientation, please contact us through the website and ask to be part of the next orientation for the rewear masks.
All right. Thank you, Ma'am Celia, for that answer. Because I would also like to ask you about where to buy because I would also like to buy one for me and for my family. But yeah, thank you for that clarification. Um, for another question, it is for Sir Ramon. For our last question, what are the development goals or SDGs which were already agreed 5 years ago? I think he or she referring to the SDGs.
Yeah. What is the question, Jeff?
What drivers of change the SDGs which were already agreed 5 years ago? I think
Well,
he or
there are several sustainable development goals that refer to the situation of the pandemic now. One is to the sustainable consumption and production. This is very important, and I think Ma'am Celia already quite elaborated on it when she talked about the supply chain. That is, we need to change our behavior of consumption and, and also the behavior of the supply, providing us the things that we need. And again, we cite an example of PPE or masks. We don't always need to use disposable single-use masks or even PPEs. There is also the sustainable development goal that refers to climate, that refers to health, to water. All this come in relevant in the light of the pandemic that very much related to our environmental crisis that brought us here. In fact, the whole issue of recovery and just transition talk about the very principles that are already in the Sustainable Development Goals, which we must need to pursue. Now, there are factors that are saying that in the time of the COVID-19, we should be able to drop the whatever notion of sustainability that we talk about because the main problem is the economic recovery. We say no, that in fact the very reason that brought us to this kind of a pandemic is the old way of wasteful consumption and production that destroyed our forest, that destroyed our environment, that even destroyed our atmosphere, leading to various environmental crises, including climate change. The more we should uphold the whole principle and goals of sustainable development as we try to recover from the COVID-19 crisis. The challenge is that now, this is the reason why, as I explained earlier, we are working both at the level of healthcare units and hospitals, but healthcare system and healthcare policies, and linking ourselves with the various sectors, including the business sector, including the supply chain sector. So this is the only way by which we can recover in a sustainable way from this COVID crisis.
Thank you, Sir Ramon, for answering that question. Again, thank you, Sir Ramon and Ma'am Celia, for entertaining our questions for this afternoon. Can we invite once again our speakers for their closing messages? First, Sir Ramon.
And again, we thank the organizers, the UTCPAL. This is my second time here, and I enjoy it every time, and it challenges me as well to present the latest that we can provide the information. And case studies are some of the more concrete solutions that have been derived from ground experiences in hospitals. And we will have more of it as we go along. But we also thank, I can see the many other questions from the 300 plus participants that are in this forum. There is, I think, 2 or 3 key messages. One, there is a sustainable solution to what is supposedly a harrowing way situation that came out of this COVID-19. Do not go back. Do not use disposable plastic as we were using it before the COVID. The more now that we should resort to reusable. Secondly, that we should work hand in hand with the various sectors and provide early solutions. The problem that we're having in the Philippines, probably in Indonesia as well, as you may have heard from the frustrating SONA yesterday, is that we acted late, very late, and now we're trying to catch up. As we try to catch up with the transmission, we are also damaging much more our environment. We are throwing away much more plastic waste in our rivers, in our oceans. Start early in providing sustainable solutions. It can be done at the household level, at the barangay level, at the community in LGU, in single hospital and offices. Always believe in what you can do as a group of individuals, as a household, and as a small community. And take it up. Speak up. And then third, let us address this pandemic with the hope that there will be a brighter future ahead of us by pursuing sustainable and healthy recovery and just transition. These are not slogans, these are real challenges that we must put our hands onto and deliver ourselves out of this huge crisis that we ourselves put our society into anyway. So time to put ourselves hand in hand and move forward to a healthy recovery.
All right. Thank you, sir, for that very inspiring message to all of us. Now, can we hear from Ma'am Celia?
I know that there were many questions, but I guess we don't have time to address them. So please get in touch with us through our website. But I just wanted to indicate that, you hear the word new normal so often. Drop it. This is normal now. I mean, at the end of the day, we cannot think of when is it going to get new normal. No, this is it na. So parang the reason for the reason for the mask is that this is now a first line of defense, but it is not the one quintessential. You have to do this in combination with other preventive measures. So I just wanted to explain that it's just one, but it is not the primary and only. Your hands are your first, very, very first things that you have to take care of. So having said that, and of course physical distancing, having said that, this whole idea of wearing something that is useful again, I think is something that should really grab us. I mean, I have to sound out what Mr. San Pascual had mentioned. It all starts with us. You know what really drove home the point? When you saw messages on Facebook saying a message from your friendly garbage man, basurero, pakiusap lang po, pakitapon po ng hiwalay ang inyo pong face mask. Kasi sila ang kawawa, di ba? So parang it starts with us. We really have to consider that the others get affected by our very actions. And so if we realize that the basurero himself is making a pitch, basura na nga yung dinadampot niya, ang binubunot niya, tapos nagmamakaawa pa siya sa atin na hiwalay naman ninyo yung inyong face mask kasi baka ako po yung magka-problema. So this is where the idea of what can we do really hits the mark. And if we can really use products that are less synthetic, more natural. So just so you're aware, we're not really completely given up with polyester, but we do have a design process for it. When we ask people to weave using natural textile fibers, the warp is made of polyester wholly, and the weft is made up of our natural textile fiber. What is the goal? Your intimate yarn, yung isa mong sinulid, hindi pwedeng magkahalo. Kailangan siya ay completely either totally natural or totally synthetic, because when you now look at how to separate, you can have a mechanism to separate and therefore find usefulness for one versus the other. So this is the idea of putting design in place at the very beginning. So we have to now rethink how we can do things better and how we can work with each other better. And at the end of this, it really takes all of us. It starts with the individual actions, individual modes, but we need all of us. So we are one people in unison, not talking about a country, we're talking about one humanity. We're all human beings. And so what affects one in one part of the world affects the other in another part of the world. So we're all in this together. So your wearing a mask is not a sign of just you protecting yourself, but you being courteous and being humble enough to say, I don't want to hurt or harm you. So with that, maraming pong salamat at look forward to having your questions come through our website.
All right. Thank you, Ma'am Celia, for reminding us with that message. Thank you for that. Because there is no time left, we encourage everyone to please, please, please continue the discussion with your friends, with your networks, and with your family, of course, as we fight against the current global pandemic. Again, thank you to everyone for those who sent their questions and to our dearly speakers. Now, before we end this program, let me call Miss Ayan to sing once again with the song Colors of the Wind.
Hello
Ayan?
once again. Can you hear me ba? Okay.
Yes, you're
Okay.
audible.
Okay. So for this song, I think the message of this is to open our eyes to all the beauty nature has to offer when it is appreciated and accepted as a whole rather than just looking it on as a source of profit. So ladies and gentlemen, colors of the wind. Sing with me if you know the song. You think you own whatever land you land on. Earth is just a dead thing you can claim. But I know every rock and tree and creature has a life, has a spirit, has a name. You think the only people who are people are the people who look and think like you. But if you walk the footsteps of a stranger, you learn things you never knew, you never knew. Have you ever heard the wolf cry to the blue corn moon? Or asked the grinning bobcat why he grinned? Can you sing with all the voices of the mountain? Can you paint with all the colors of the wind? Can you paint with all the colors of the wind? Come run the hidden pine trails of the forest. Come taste the sun-sweet berries of the earth. Come roll in all the riches all around you. And for once, never wonder what they're worth. The rainstorm and the river are my brothers. The hero and the other are my friends, and we are all connected to each other in a circle, in a hope that never ends. Have you ever heard the wolf cry to the blue corn moon? Or let the eagle tell you where it's been? Can you sing with all the voices of the mountain? Can you paint with all the colors of the wind? Can you paint with all the colors of the wind? How high does the sycamore grow? If you cut it down, then you'll never know. And you'll never hear the wolf cry to the blue corn moon. For whether we are white or copper skin, we need to sing with all the voices of the mountain. Need to paint with all the colors of the wind. You can own the earth and still all you own is earth until you can pay with all the colors us on the wind. Mm-hmm. I think that's it. Thank you po. Maraming
Hey,
salamat. Yay!
thank you. That was really nice. Thank you.
Thank you din po.
All right, thank you, Ian, for that another inspiring performance. Before we close our program, thank you so much, Ian. Um, Now we have come to the last part of our program for this afternoon. I have seen a lot of questions. I hope you can contact and keep in touch with our speakers to know more about your queries. I believe you can email or you can add them in their social media so that you can keep in touch with our dearly speakers. Now, we have heard that the management of healthcare wastes requires increased attention and diligence to avoid the adverse health outcomes associated with poor practice, including exposure to infectious agents and toxic substance, and including the global pandemic coming from the COVID-19 virus. The process of institutionalization of a good healthcare waste management system is complex. We all know that, but it is needed at this time more than ever, and of course for the following years for a sustainable, greener, and better normal in the future. Before we close, I would like to leave this favorite quote of mine by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Thank you to our speakers, our participants, and our online viewers. In behalf of the organizer of this online webinar, this Jefferson Estela, thank you and good afternoon. Maraming salamat po.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bye bye.